Today I'm going to show you guys how to make an emotional beat like this. I'm going to cover everything from the melody to the drums to the mixing. But yeah, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight to it. Alright, for the melody, I'm just going to play it without the drums. If that melody doesn't make you feel some type of way, then I don't know what to tell you. First, with the piano, I used a bright preset from Keyscape. The reverb knob, I put it all the way down. EQ, I put the D noise strong just to remove all the harsh frequencies from the higher end. And this is what the chord sounds like. I'm gonna play it by itself. This chord progression never goes wrong when it comes to pain melodies. If you guys look at my past tutorials and even the ones coming up, I use this chord progression a lot. First things first, just start off with the root notes. Once you place the first root note down, you just go down by 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the third one would just go up by 1. And then the last root note just goes up by 2. So after the third one, 1, 2. The way I see it, the fourth root note is optional, but it gives like a satisfying end to the chord progression, if that makes sense. You really could just end it like this. Putting it up too, just, I don't know, it's always satisfying to me. And this is a trick that I like to do to make the piano sound realistic. So these root notes, the velocity is high up, and the second one is just like kind of soft. And this just kind of feels like an echo. So it really adds on to that pain feel. And it just feels like it echoes until it goes to the next one. And here it just echoes, goes up, and then echoes again, and then forth. And these notes right here, it's just the root notes, right? Just going up by 1. And then the velocity is really low, but you can hear it. And then for the top ones, it's really simple. It's just 2 notes playing right here with this note just going down by 1 and then repeat. So basically it just looks like this, and it's just copy and paste the entire time. Similar to that echo effect from the first 2 notes, it goes. And the velocity just kind of dies down and it stays a little consistent right here. And then I just randomized it a little bit. And I really wanted to emphasize these notes right here. So the velocity is the highest in this chord progression. And what really makes it so emotional is like, it's just steady. It goes from like that, right? And to make the piano sound realistic, you want to make sure that you strum, right? So for MacBook, it's just Option S. Windows would be Alt S. And for the strength, just move it around here. And for the effects on the piano, I added slight reverb, so 10% mix. And then for the low cut, usually for pianos, I turn it like really high up so the reverb doesn't sound like murky. And for the EQ, I just took out a lot of the low ends and then some of the mids right here. And then for the second piano, it almost follows the top keys from the first piano. I did change it up a little bit, but this is what it sounds like together. Okay, for the top keys, I just took this. Basically, just put it an octave higher. But as you can see, it's not exactly the same, like if you look at the ghost notes. So the trick that I did is actually put these notes right here an octave higher. And another difference is it's more steady than the first one. So it's not like, it's really just, and as you can see, they're not all connected. It's like it's taking a breath almost. And the same thing with that echo effect I told you guys about. So right here, the velocity is the highest, goes down, and it goes down a little more, and then it just kind of picks it back up. And it's like getting higher, and then boom, goes back to this. Right here, I switched it up, so it's just these 3 notes. So it would just use these 3 notes, right? So, and same thing, just an octave higher. Right? And then same thing, except this time, instead of going like, right, it just steps down. So So it's really simple. It's like, and then for this piano, it's the same exact preset as the first piano. And then for the mixing, it's usually the same for the most part, you know, take out the low ends. Except for all my top keys, I do like to put a little more reverb and then put the low cut all the way up. So at 1500 hertz. All right, so that's the piano. And next is the strings. And this is what it sounds like. And then for the strings, I use Epic strings from Synology. After you get the main chord progression down, pads, Rhodes, strings should be easy, but you want to remove all of the extra stuff. So I just copy and pasted the piano to the strings. I made sure to remove a lot of this. If it's strings like this and like a pad, you want to make sure everything just sounds more consistent. So I would go to snap to scale, put it at line, and then I would quantize all of the notes. So for MacBook, Option, Command, Q. And that just snaps everything to a line, so everything is consistent, and it just removes the strums because we leave the strums for the piano. And then mixing, I just took out some of the low ends and some of the mids, and that's really it. All right, moving on to the bass, I actually have two. So the first one, and then I use this preset, the guitar and bass SRX from Synology. And I just copy and pasted the root notes. And I took out all like the echo notes. And it has like this warm, fuzzy feel to it, you know? Usually when it comes to like bass guitars, if I take out the high ends, I'm just taking out like all of the clicks and everything. And the point is to make it feel warm and it keeps it smooth. And I did take out a good amount of the low ends, but it's also because I added another bass. So we have a second bass, which is a synth bass. And before I get to the other layers like the strings and the guitar, I want to show you guys another part of the arrangement where the chords actually change. So for this section, you guys saw the melodies for this part. So once it gets to this part right here, the chord progression changes a little bit, but it makes a huge difference. So this is what it sounds like. So going back to the root notes for the first piano, it's just 1, go down by 5, and then the third one would just go up by 1. So before it looked like this, but just drop it down by 3, or basically 2 below the second one. So this is the thing with this chord progression is there are so many ways you can go about it. And honestly, this is my favorite part of the beat because just this chord progression meshing with the strings just sounds so like beautiful. So obviously if you're changing the piano, then you gotta change the strings right here. And then the bass, so drop it down by 3. But yeah, that's basically the switch up on the section, and I have it happen twice. All right, so for the layering for the strings and guitar, I basically just picked up my violin and just started playing this right here. All right, I'm bullshitting. I got this from Splice. There's no way I could play this. I used to play the violin and I was so ass. Splice is honestly a go-to when it comes to layering. It's honestly easier for me to just get one through Splice or just any other royalty-free websites. But for the Splice users, there's one feature that they have called Splice Bridge. This is gonna save so much time. I already have it right here, but if you never got it, I think the download option should be right here. And basically what Splice Bridge does is it puts all of their samples in tempo and in key for you. So you don't have to go through every single sample, drag and drop, pitch it, put it in tempo, and waste precious time after realizing it doesn't even fit your beat. It's such a time saver, and if you already knew about it, congrats, I envy you guys. And for those who don't, download that shit right now. But for the guitar and strings, I can't really break it down because I didn't make it, but I just use Splice Bridge to go through all the strumming guitar samples and see what matches with the beat. And same thing for the strings. This is just the guitar by itself. And then effects, just took out some of the low ends and a little bit of the mids. And then for the strings, I actually have 2 strings. So this is the first one. So it's a solo violin, no effects. And then it moves on to the second string, which the chord progression changes. And this is really what sells it for me. Like this part It's so emotional. There's different violins and violas. It sounds like an orchestra. One thing I will say about dragging these type of samples is when it's harmonizing, you need to find that exact key. And yeah, that's basically it for the melody. Now we're gonna move on to the drums. Right, so this is what the drums sound like by itself. All right, and I'm gonna put in the bass right here. All right, so as you guys can tell, there's no 808. I honestly didn't think it was necessary for this beat because I just wanted this beat to feel raw. While there are trap elements to this, I didn't want it to sound too trappy. I don't know. All right, so first a crash and then a kick from my Multikit. And for the kick, I put the mono all the way to 100%, so it's straight down in the middle. I actually did have an 808 before, but I ended up removing it because, like I said, it just didn't feel as raw with it. And then the hi-hat. It's obviously not mind-blowing, but it does the job. But my rule of thumb for these two-step hi-hats is to always change the velocity for here. So it could just look like this, right? But going back to that echo effect I talked about for the top keys and the root notes for the piano, I basically applied the same thing for here. So I just did this, changed the velocity right here, and then I just scrolled it down just a little bit, right? So it just gives that echo. And I keep emphasizing that echo effect because for these emotional beats, it just adds so much to it. And then for the mixing, this probably didn't do anything. I'm not gonna lie. Boosted up the high ends just a little bit and then delay. You don't have to touch any of these knobs. You wanna make sure the delay knob is just very slight, so I just put it at 10%. And then I also did put some reverb to it, very slight too. I only put like 6% for the wet, and I don't think I touch any of these knobs. And for this open hat, it's what's giving that drum like that steady, like there is a delay effect on this. I put fruity delay and then put it at 4 notes. You don't have to change anything else. And then the snare, really simple. This one's from my Multikit. And what I actually did was layer it with another snare. So this is the second snare. So yeah, this is the more acoustic sounding one. And then for this, I just added some reverb. I put it at 18% for the wet level. And that's it for that. I actually have a third open hat, and this just hits with the crash. So, and then there's a fourth open hat, another acoustic one. And then the impact, this is what's really making it hit. So, and with this impact FX, I had to time stretch it a little bit so it's on tempo. And the last thing for the drums, I use a drum fill from the One Sauce Multikit, and it's basically just a chime plus a reverse clap. So this is what it sounds like. And then for the master, just throw in a soft clipper and an EQ. And that's basically it for the drums. So yeah, all together.
Daydream made it so it's major, huh?
you guys made it this far, I really appreciate you guys. If you guys want any other type of tutorials, beat breakdowns, vlogs, really any kind of videos, just let me know your ideas in the comments, and you can also DM me on Instagram. For the producers who want to work with me, I have a public loop email, so feel free to send. Yeah, once again, thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm slightly sick. I recorded 2 YouTube tutorials today, and then I called my friend for over an hour, and now my voice is fucked.